Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Mastering Midlife, How to Thrive When the World Asks the Most of You. I'm your host, Mark Silverman, and today I get to speak to the amazing Monica Day. And for me, Monica is one of the most alive, amazing, talented people in the world. The reason I asked her to be on the podcast was to talk about sex, relationship, intimacy after 40, after 50. And when I was trying to figure out, I've known Monica for years, how to introduce her, I thought about all the results that I've seen her do with people, from putting people on stage to bring them to their own truths and aliveness, to working with couples on their intimacy. So I don't know how you're so incredible. I don't know how to put you in a box to tell people who you are. I just love what it says on your website, that the Mad Life website, liberating aliveness in a world gone numb. That describes you to a T. You've liberated my aliveness every time I am in your company. So Monica, how would you like to be introduced today?
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you. I think you actually just did it. And it's really true. I can't be in a box, and I don't think any of the rest of us should either. I'm kind of anti-box.
I love it.
Yeah, because it's so limiting. But I think having people really feel that spark in their life and really be able to live in their fullness is what I want, because I think that's actually the foundation for everything else.
Great. So I asked you to talk specifically on this subject, and you're gonna help guide me, because I'm a 56-year-old man trying to figure out long-term relationship, sex, intimacy, all of that, all wrapped in one, and everything that it comes with. And all my clients are in some various flavor of either newly in a relationship, or quite a few of them, and the focus of this show is people in their 40s and 50s and 60s, either coming out of relationship, starting new ones, or in a long-term relationship. What's the challenges? And you said you would guide me through this. What are the challenges that you see for people in their 40s and 50s at this time in life?
Yeah. Well, before I go right into that, I have to give you some backdrop even for this conversation, which is that our sexuality is formed by such a complicated cocktail of things, right? That most of the time we don't realize at any point in our life. The biological, hormonal, cultural, morality, right? All of it shapes who we are as sexual beings. And yet we live in a culture where that is not freely talked about, not educated about, and sort of lives in a certain type of juvenile secrecy, if you will.
So I'm gonna edit this out. You need to fix your mic. It's like hitting against you. How can you? Is there something you can do with that?
There is. I lost the little thing that goes to it. Let's see. Let me see if that works any better.
I move around a little bit.
Is that any better?
Totally better.
Okay.
Right. So great. So that's a really great point, because when people talk to me about my sexuality, I often talk about it as a stew, as a cocktail of all the ingredients of childhood, of nature, of nurture, of all this stuff. There's choice, there's predestination. And I just kind of have to leave it all alone. But taking it out and looking at it, however painful, really is an interesting way of informing who I am today.
Absolutely. So there's a certain form of cognitive dissonance that comes up when you get to these ages of 40 and 50 and you experience yourself as a mature person in the world who knows a few things about adulting. And yet this piece of our sexuality somehow remains kind of locked in, like I said, a certain juvenile space. We don't have a language for it. We don't have shared ideas about it, right? So we're a little stunted. So I wanted to kind of give that as a backdrop, because I think that that's jarring when people get to midlife and they have these feelings, and then that adds even more shame on top of what is already tends to be kind of a rather shameful place, unfortunately. And I also want to say, not for everyone. Everyone's cocktail is a little different, and that makes it challenging too. Because we're in an environment where people are experts. And so then you hear an expert talk about something about your sex life. It doesn't feel right for you. And then you either decide that the expert is full of, crap, or there's something wrong with you. So it's very hard for us to climb out of, this position that a lot of us are in.
Sure. What do you think is the consequence of us just not looking at it, just saying, we know who we are, we know what we're doing, and just kind of putting it in the box, since we're using that metaphor this whole time? What do you think though happens in people's lives when they don't look at this?
Well, it's funny because as you ask that, I'm thinking about the cover of your book, Mastering Midlife. It's a lot of little red sports cars. That's the consequence. Right. And we have this terminology, right? We call it a midlife crisis. I'm really convinced, and women have their own form, by the way. There's a masculine form of that and feminine form of that.
What is the feminine form of the little red car?
So women go through a sex surge in their life in their 40s. So that's one of the reasons why you can't kind of lump together like, 40s, 50s. For us, that's like two planets, right? So what male-bodied, and I'm going to say male-bodied and female-bodied people, because a lot of this is hormonal, right? It's just built in. We go through a surge that is not unlike what male-bodied people go through in their 20s. So, yeah. Very interesting for everybody, and a lot of right. It catches people by surprise, and so how our sexuality moves and flows through our lifetime is what can sometimes lead people to kind of what we call this crisis of midlife. And it's only a crisis because something is happening to us. We can't name it. We don't know what it is. We don't know how to talk about it. We don't know how to fill it. It's the most profound emptiness we have ever felt. And so what do? Well, we live in a capitalist culture. We go buy stuff. That's what we do, right? Or we torch our lives. We go start another life. A lot of this happens after we're done raising children. So part of it is that we don't understand what's happening to us, and we don't know how to make these transitions.
So what is the first step into starting is into doing this in a healthy way?
Yeah. So part of it is acknowledging that your sexuality, and I want to also say your sensuality, that's a really big piece, because we get very focused on, there's sort of sex the act, and then there's sex the energy, right?
And I would say, when I think of you, the thing that I learned most from you is accepting my own sensuality and embracing that, and I've seen you do that with others.
Yes. And that's so important, because as we go through our life, and some of those biological inputs, right? Must make babies, must, right? That stuff that drives us starts to dwindle.
Right. So nobody needs you and me to make babies anymore. We made our babies. We're done. But now we still want sex, intimacy, and sensuality, right?
We absolutely do. We absolutely do. And we want it for totally different reasons. And it's hard for us to even figure out what those are, or to even align. I mean, people are still having sex the way they did in their 20s. And when they're not having sex that way anymore, they are like, okay, I guess I'm done. And my head explodes. I'm like, no. You're actually just getting started in this new phase.
So when you first start talking to people, where do you start sending them in themselves to start this journey?
Yeah, it's a great question, because a lot of my clients early on, like in the past few months, they have this thing where they're like, I came to you for better sex and we haven't talked about sex yet. I'm like, and we won't be for a while. I send people literally into their bodies, and this is becoming a little bit more popular over the years. People call it embodiment practices, things along those lines. But to me, it's really simple. We live in this body that's like this highly sensitized vessel, right? That carries us around for our whole lives. And it's pretty well designed, right? For attunement to our surroundings, for attunement with each other. I mean, if you think about some of our survival skills, it's about more than hunting and gathering, right? There's a lot of things that we have had to do. We might be forgetting that now that technology does it all for us, but we are attuned. We have capacity and wisdom in our body that we don't know. And most of us have forgotten how to listen to it. This is one of the reasons, this is not just for sensuality and sexuality. This is even health. I mean, how many times do you hear about someone, right, who just kept hitting the snooze button on symptoms in their body, and by the time they show up and go to the doctor for something, they've got a stage 4 something, right? So I get people to get in tune again with just their physical system. And then they have.
So tell me. So I'm in the car right now listening to this, and I want to get attuned, but I don't have Monica Day in my world. What can I do to start getting attuned to my own physicalness?
Yeah. The very first thing I often have people do is an exercise where they go through their daily routine, just their average daily routine. Don't change anything, but do it slower, with more attention. So chew your food instead of chewing it 3 times and swallowing it while you're also, driving and putting your makeup on. Do one thing at a time. Do it more slowly and with more attention.
Oh my God, and that would make you present.
And you would be surprised. I can't tell you how many times I give that as an opening exercise to people, and I can't even tell you how many people, they either rush through it, they don't do it fully, I didn't read it before I did it, and they have to go back and do it again. That's how out of tune we are with our physical body. So
the first thing I teach, with my clients, the first thing I teach people is to breathe. It was the thing I didn't know how to do, so of course I teach how to breathe. And I'm always shocked when I'm on Zoom with someone across the country and they're all manic, and I say, okay, just put your hand on your belly, and now you're breathing from your chest. Just try and get the air into your belly. And I watch them just settle in. So you're taking this a step further to breathe, chew your food, notice your toothpaste, notice your, how your clothes feel.
Right. Take a shower and touch every part of your body. Explore different sensations, textures, right? One of the things I also do with people is have them start to develop a language for sensation. We don't realize it, but our language is almost purely judgment. Yes. It's good, it's bad, I like it, I don't. Purely judgment. When I have people speak and I take the judgment words out, they can't use any judgment words, or the person, that they're practicing with raises their hand. Oh yeah. No, like you see the wires just like
I'm sure it's circuiting.
Fry.
I want to pause this for a while and contemplate what you just suggested. So take the judgment, see if you can think and move through your life without the judgments.
Yes. Yeah, it's huge. So in some ways, it's like if your life is an orchestra, and it's all out of tune and nothing is playing in the right rhythm, you have to stop and you have to just work with the horn section. And then you got to work with the strings, right? And then you got to work with, and then once everybody kind of gets it, then you're like, okay, people, let's try this again. That's kind of what you have to do with your physical self to get yourself back in your body.
So we're still with this is men, this is women.
Yes.
We're talking about 40s and 50s, but this is at any age to be in tune with your body.
Yes, it is. And the reason so yes, I do this with everyone, but I will say specifically why it's important for midlife people, of which I am one. Um, it's so we're in a youth-driven culture. Everything in our culture is geared to and oriented towards youth. And once you get past a certain age, you're supposed to then start anti-aging. So we don't do aging well. And one of the things that we really start to do is resent our bodies aging. So,
Put this is where you take the highlighter and you start listening to everything Monica's about to say. So I can totally relate to resenting my body for it aging. Like I cannot lose the weight that I want to lose.
mm-hmm.
Like I go up and down the stairs, I start looking like my mother the way she goes up and down the stairs, and then I start judging the shit out of that. Right? So yeah, keep going.
Yes. Yes, and it's interesting you said about mother too, right? Because we're watching our parents age, and there's a terror. I mean, I have a mother with dementia, and every time I can't come up with a word, I am terrified. So a lot starts happening in this stage of life, and it makes us want to either go back to a youth that isn't really available to us anymore, or we just start shutting down because it's too hard to confront what's happening in our bodies. So,
is there a third one? So we want to go back to our youth, which we can't go back to. We shut it down and we don't confront it. And then the other is the maniacal obsession with trying to keep it, which is, I'm going to go to CrossFit, even though at 55 I should not be in CrossFit.
exactly.
Right? Pilates.
So I feel like this. Yes, although Pilates can be great for all ages.
I regretted that the moment
but I understand what you're saying. It's being attuned to your body, to your physicality, and to me, it's then connecting it right with your emotionality, with your mental faculties. Right, it's putting the whole thing together. Now, see, I told you we talk about a lot before we get to sex. See how much we have to do before we can get even to that threshold, right? Because what we have to realize is your sex is going to come from the body that you're in, right? And it's going to be, if you keep trying to do it from the body you once had, you're going to move into a cycle of shame and regret and probably dysfunction. That's another thing that starts to happen. Our bodies are actually not dysfunctional. We just keep trying to force them to function the way they used to.
Got it.
So what's available,
and that goes for men and women. Women have their own issues with their plumbing, and then men start to have issues with their plumbing.
Absolutely. And part of the importance of aging our sexuality along with our bodies is to decouple our idea of sex from these ideas of performance, function, right?
Oh, that's so hard. Yes.
I know.
I get it.
I know. But
it's funny.
I
have a client who's a middle-aged woman, and she's still rocking it, but she's middle-aged, so she's dating middle-aged men, and one of her criteria is they need to be able to perform, right? And I'm like, oh man, we're starting to get to the point where, at 56, I'm starting to get to the point where the people that I want to be with, and I'm in a monogamous relationship, so I'm kind of saying this hypothetically, but the people that I want to be with, they may have challenges and issues far beyond whatever relationship I want to have. And now that accepting of others. I was talking to someone who runs a dating service. And she said that everybody everybody thinks that the age appropriate partner for them is too old when they look at their pictures and see them, and they think that so our own self-image is of a younger person, and then we meet someone else who's 56 and we're like, oh, I can't do that. You're crazy, right? We're crazy. But all this acceptance that comes into this.
Yes, a lot of acceptance, and we have to expand our range of sensual experience, sensual pleasure, so that we can see all these other possibilities. And you asked me what was the third way, and we kind of digressed from that. The third way is that once you get in your body in the way that I'm talking about, what you then see is that there's this wisdom and this power that is available to you. It has nothing to do with what used to be available to you physically or biologically in your 20s and 30s. It's something completely new and different. It's actually awesome.
Keep going. Tell us. We're sitting on the edge of our seats in our cars. I want to know.
Well, I'm convinced that this is actually the most powerful time in our lives, and that we are wasting it on this emphasis on youth. Overall, as a culture, on every single level, we have tossed out the idea of elders, right? We don't want that phase. And I think that that's what's happening in this midlife, is that we don't realize that there's this huge chunk of our lives where we are going to be our most powerful, our most expressed, where we could have more pleasure than we can imagine. And we're literally avoiding it because of this focus on youth and this idea that we go from youth to death. We're missing the best part of our lives. Midlife is the best part of our lives.
And reiterate why, because my brain is sizzling with some of this stuff. Reiterate why, and then we're going to end this as part one, to end us on a good note of why this is the most powerful, sensual part of our lives. And then we'll end part one, and then we'll go into part two.
Got it. So this is the most, on the realm of sensuality and sexuality, this is the most powerful because we are not being forced by a biological imperative to reproduce. So we get to use a much greater toolkit, a much wider range, fun, pleasure, depth, intimacy, understanding of ourselves, of another person, patience, like all of these things that you've developed throughout your life can be now brought into the intimacy and the sensuality and the sexuality of your life, because you are not being driven by this like ka-chunk, 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 right? Like I am not driven by my genitals anymore.
Well, you're obviously not a man. Some of us are still a little driven by our genitals, but the possibilities that you're painting here for me are just so beautiful. What's open, and I've often, I'm in the self-help community, so I hear this all the time. I've been around you so much that I've learned a lot of this, and I'm still dragging myself into, because I've been able to pass as a younger person. I've been able to prolong this. I remember when I turned 40, I lost a bunch of weight. I got laser surgery, right? I cut my hair, I got a tattoo, and I was a 40-year-old Backstreet Boy. So I was able to prolong this. I got a sports car convertible and all that stuff. And I was able to fool myself for another 5, 6, 7, 8 years that I was able to do that. And now I can't fool myself anymore. So now I really have to listen to this opening up. So thank you. This is going to be the end of part one. And we're leaving you with, this is the most powerful, most sensual, and most opportunistic part of your life for your sensuality, your relationship, and your intimacy, and yes, your sex, which we're going to talk about next. Thank you for joining me, Monica, for part one. We're going to, this will probably roll right into part two if you're listening to the podcast. And if you're listening to this podcast and you like it, please share it. Please like it. Please leave a comment. Let me know who you'd like to have on the show. If there's a subject matter that you'd like us to address, please add that. Thank you for spending time with us. And 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 Monica's teaching me how to do a podcast because I'm really early in this. I have to thank Monica for being part of part one, because I know I'm going to be talking to her for part two. So I forgot to say, Monica, thank you for this wisdom. Thank you for all this amazingness.
Absolutely.
So
And if people don't
find
listen,
you? Where can people find you?
Yeah, I was going to say, in case they don't keep going with part two, you can find me at monicaday.com. So that's pretty easy. And, I want to say that there's a lot of rules and regulations now that is keeping us from talking about sexual topics online. So I want to let people know that you might go to my website and be like, wait, I'm not seeing this here. It's because you won't see it if I talk too much about it directly on the website. But I do have a course coming up on intimacy, and I talk a lot about aliveness. But this topic
when is the course coming up?
There's an online course in intimacy that's running February 6th to the 26th.
Outstanding. And they can find that on your website at monicaday.com. Outstanding. Thank you.
Yeah,
Monica.
they can.
And because I know I'm going to be talking to you again, we appreciate you in part one, and we'll talk to you again in part two.
Can't wait.
Have a great day, everyone.